Hi and welcome back to DBU. Thanks for watching and please subscribe. Today we're continuing with the previous topic on recording console features. Some of the more complicated features we find on a recording desk are the pre-post feature and solo bus. The pre-post feature is related to cue and effect sends. This is important for one to grasp because it can have a significant outcome on the results of your mix. I'm going to include some audio and video demos on the screen to help explain these concepts better. Usually found by the aux controls, the pre-post fader switch determines whether the signal in the aux path is being controlled by the main fader and the aux control or only the aux control. This feature is necessary for cue mixes because if the cue send is set for post, as I ride the channel fader in the control room, the once satisfactory headphone mix now changes with it, which will only frustrate our talent. We need to be able to independently adjust each mix, but from the same fader. The pre-post switch lets me do this by reconfiguring how this send works. Let's listen to an example with the vocal here. Pay attention to what happens when we flip the switch.
Prognosis, insanity, instability, psychologically rammed in, experiment abandoned, no compensation, this twisted nation, political interest, classified fortress. Psychologically rammed in, experiment abandoned. Political interest, classified fortress, corruption, conspiracy, divide of you and me.
You'll notice in this situation, pre-fader works best because it allows me to adjust the faders without interfering with the headphone mix. Conversely, let's imagine a situation where I have a vocal with some effects on the board. If the effect send is set for pre, we notice the vocal disappears, but the reverb tail does not.
Top government officials, scientific bells and whistles, in an underground laboratory. Doesn't matter, keep going, don't stop. We're going to find the secret to mind control.
Once switching the effect send to post, the send will then behave the way we would have expected it to. There are other situations where the same feature can be useful, but these are the most common examples. Basically, the pre-post fader option allows us to pick the order of the path that best suits the needs that we have in any given situation. Additionally, many Pro consoles have a way to turn each aux on or off. Sometimes switches and sometimes pots that pull up and push down. I recall a situation with a celebrity engineer who was upset with my console because twisting the aux knob didn't result in any output. He was convinced the board was broken. In this case, the auxes were push-pull. And as he was expressing his distaste for my bloody console in front of a room full of people, I politely walked over to the problem aux and pushed the knob down, thus enabling the aux. As you'd expect, he looked pretty dumb. Lesson learned in life: never assume your gear is at fault, even when it's being a pain in the butt. Operator error is more likely the culprit. The next feature we're going to cover today is a solo switch. Depending on the desk, it can have alternate forms of operation. Normally, when you depress a solo button, the selected channel is isolated to the monitor bus for auditioning. It's very useful when trying to locate a track or EQ a sound. Solos can be combined too, although some are latching, which means they stay down even after you pull up your finger, whereas others are momentary, which means they release once you lift your finger up. There are also different points in the path where we can solo. One is pre-fader listen, or PFL, and the other is after fader listen, or AFL, which is also known as non-destructive solo. They pretty much do what they say they do. They allow you to listen before or after the channel fader. It's helpful when checking the difference between your original signal and then the fader output. Rather than hearing your signal in mono every time you press a solo, there's an additional form of solo called solo in place, or SIP. which is also known as destructive solo. We call it destructive solo because it can affect signals being routed out your buses, which will ruin a recording. This solo keeps a signal where it's panned in the stereo image. Some desks also have a feature called solo isolate or solo safe. This allows the user to solo a particular channel, say a vocal, but not cut out or mute any of the reverb returns that are associated with it. All of these are helpful, but few desks have them all. Another feature is the mute bus. This allows the engineer to assign multiple channels simultaneously to one master mute button for single button muting in a mix. It's super helpful when trying to quiet open mics in a final mix. Lastly, we have the pan. The pan feature is what allows us to pan the signal between multiple buses, say odd and even or left and right. Surround consoles employ a joystick panner to allow for placement in the surround matrix. Pans are a requirement for stereo operation and have an associated rule called the pan law. It's essentially a buffer circuit that makes up for the loss in gain when you assign the same signal to two different speakers. It's usually around 3 dB. To get super techy, equal gain is minus 6 dB, equal power is minus 3 dB, and on those fancy SSL consoles, it's minus 4.5 dB. Not that you really cared to know any of that anyway. This wraps up my topic for today. As usual, thanks for watching and please subscribe. Feel free to leave a comment or ask a question. Until next time, cheers.